If you're watching this video, I'm willing to bet that somewhere along the way, you either heard or somebody told you that you're stuck in a left AIC pattern. And so you also probably tried the classic left AIC repositioning drills. But when these don't work, you're left thinking one or both of these two things. Number one, you're doing the drills incorrectly. Or number two, you must have some special problem that's going to require a special solution. But in many cases, as was the case with me and many of the people that I work with, neither of these is true. And in fact, the answer is much simpler. And it's that you're not stuck in a left AIC pattern, but instead are in a different pattern, an equally as common one that I see just as much, if not more, than the left AIC. And the even crazier part is that if you use the left AIC exercises, you not only won't fix this, but you can actually make it worse. So in this video, we're going to talk about what the left AIC pattern is, how this pattern differs from it, and some key differences when it comes to addressing these two patterns that can make or break your program. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so first things first, what is the left AIC pattern? If you're not familiar, the left AIC pattern is a pattern of postural asymmetry that was discovered and talked about by the Postural Restoration Institute. AIC stands for anterior, front side of the body, interior, inside, and C for chain, anterior, interior chain. That means muscles on the inside part of the front of the body that, by the Postural Restoration Institute's definitions, are overactive or overfacilitated. And those overactive muscles, or just muscles that are working too hard, are going to cause this left hemipelvis, this bone right here, to come forward relative to the other side. And when this happens, there's an orientation or a shift of the pelvis towards the right side. You're going to have the right side hiking up and, according to PRI, a tendency to be stuck in the right side of your body or in right stance when we're describing it in terms of the gait or walking cycle. And to go with that orientation of the pelvis to the right is also a compression in the upper rib cage and shoulder area. When this happens, the ribs come down and the shoulder follows. This creates a right shoulder that is lower than the left, and this is called the right BC or brachial chain pattern. So when people talk about the left AIC pattern, you'll often hear them say left AIC, right BC pattern. Now, as I'm going through this, you're probably wondering why I'm going through the painstaking effort of talking about the right shoulder being lower and the right hip being higher and why they are. Well, it turns out that in the right global compression pattern, which is just the name that I came up with for what we're going to talk about in a second, we're going to see very similar positions, but in terms of what you're going to do about it, it's often going to be the opposite. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about what the right global compression pattern is and why this is so different in terms of a solution than when you're looking at the left AIC. Now remember, in the left AIC pattern, we had a forward left pelvis that was orienting the body to the right. And because of this, PRI practitioners will say that we're stuck in the right stance phase. In other words, we're having trouble getting off of the right leg. In the right global compression pattern, we see the right shoulder and hip coming together, and the pelvis on this side is coming forward relative to the left. The combination of the hip and shoulder coming together, as well as the pelvis going forward, actually shifts the body away from the right leg and towards the left. This is super important because many of the PRI activities are going to work on shifting us towards the left. And in this case, we actually have to do the opposite. Now, to understand why this shoulder and hip coming together combined with the pelvis coming forward actually pushes us to the left, I have a very state-of-the-art prop with me. Okay, I love it. This is leaking. But as you see, this is a bag of water. And so when we think about the inside of the body, believe it or not, we really are like a big bag of water. And so pretend this is my right side and this is my left side. If I squeeze the shoulder and the hip on this side together, I'm gonna get movement of that water towards the left side, okay? Now, imagine from this view, if I then squeeze the back, well, what's gonna happen is all of that water is not only gonna go to the left, but it's also going to get pushed slightly forward. Now, when this occurs in the body, it creates a pretty reliable position. Let's take a look. All right, so if I hike up and I move forward on the right more than the left, what you're gonna see here is a pelvis that, relatively speaking, comes back on this left side compared to the right. In this case, in order for us to keep the feet pointing straight ahead, this left femur bone is going to turn into internal rotation, while this right one is going to turn out into external rotation. This is going to create a glute on the right side that is incredibly tight and short. And so many of the activities that you're going to see in PRI that work to shorten that glute, to push you away from the right and to the left, are actually going to do the exact opposite of what we want. In this case, we're going to want to reverse engineer that and instead bring this upper part of the pelvis back and then down towards the ground as we create internal rotation on the right and relative external rotation on the left. And believe it or not, we're also going to want to practice on shifting that pelvis forward on the left relative to the right, once again reinforcing internal rotation on the right and external rotation on the left. The complete opposite of what you're going to see in left AIC repositioning activities. Now that we understand the pelvis part of it, let's look at the rib cage. So in PRI activities, you'll often see the cue of bringing your left shoulder down. So if my right shoulder was lower than left, and I was over my right side, it would make sense to bring the left shoulder down, which would not only correct the shoulder height difference, but would also shift me over to the left. But in the right global compression pattern, this is going to be the opposite of what we want. Remember, we're squeezing together here between the ribcage and pelvis, and we're turning away from the leg, which is shifting us onto the left and away from the right. If we want to get over the right side, then we don't want to shift down with the left rib cage, because shifting down with the left rib cage just shifts us further over the left leg. Instead, we want to take the rib cage and head, and we want to shift it to the right as we allow a little bit of space to open between the right rib cage and pelvis. This is going to take the whole system above the leg and allow us to shift over onto that side. Now, one thing to keep in mind, like we said, we have a right hip hike here on the right side. So many times in the global right compression pattern, what you're going to see is a shift in the frontal plane through the pelvis, just like the left AIC pattern, but a turning away in the transverse plane, which is very, very different. Now, from here, we're going to see the shift to the left in the rib cage at the same time. So to correct this, when we're doing the shift back to the right, we really only want to shift to the right in the rib cage and the head, while actually letting the pelvis turn towards the right leg in the transverse plane, but slightly shift back towards the left in the side-to-side or frontal plane. All right, so by this point, you're probably noticing that there's a lot going on here and there's a lot of similarities and differences. So if you're confused right now, but you think that this might be what's going on, go down to the link in the description and book a movement assessment. I have world-class coaches who can help you determine if this is the pattern you're in, the left AIC pattern, it's something else, or you're over-obsessing about the pattern and that's not actually what's holding you back. When you can have someone assess you who both understands these types of patterns as well as movement on a high level, you'll be able to get the best possible direction forward so that you're not wasting time, money, and energy. Now, with that said, I do want to go through a few sample exercises that you can use to test out as to whether this is actually the pattern that you're dealing with. Let's go ahead and jump into those. If you're getting value from this video so far, consider liking it, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. All these things help the algorithm to help me help more people. All right, back to the video. All right, so in these exercises, we're going to start off with exercise 1, which is going to help us shift the rib cage over the pelvis to get a less compressed position here on the right side. Then we're going to take that position and work on the left and the right hips in exercises 2 and 3 to get those changes to stick. So to start out here, we're going to put something right up against the right hip, and this is going to constrain movement of that right pelvis. Then we're going to practice shifting the head and upper body over this right side so that we have increased pressure in the right foot. When this happens, due to the constraint against the right hip, all that movement's going to be happening from the top down. This will have the effect of unhiking the right hip slightly and allowing space between the rib cage and the upper part of the pelvis. But it will not emphasize the frontal plane shift to the right, which often increases the hike. Once we're in this position, we can simply do a few breaths easy in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then to make it more challenging, we can lift that left leg up until the knee is at or slightly beyond the level of the pelvis, and even allow a little bit of hiking of that left side relative to the right side. And this should make sense because all we're doing here is we're allowing a little bit of the opposite position to happen on the left that we were seeing earlier on the right. As this happens, you'll sense that right pelvis dropping down even a little bit more. Now, to fully enhance this, we can take the left knee and reach it forward to turn the body away from the left and slightly towards the right side. As we do this, we'll induce internal rotation on the right and relative abduction and slight external rotation on the left. Now, we've reversed engineered the position of the right global compression pattern and should be able now to move more easily between the left and the right sides. All right, so now that we have the right global compression pattern a little bit reversed, so we have more options to the opposite position, we now need to work more on the pelvis. Remember, with the hike and the turn on the right side, we have external rotation bias on the right side, and we have internal rotation bias on the left. So to reverse that, what we're seeing here, we want to be able to shift back into the right side and slightly down, or up on the left side and slightly forward. This is going to induce internal rotation and pelvic drop on the right, and external rotation and pelvic hike on the left. We're going to start off here with a staggered position that's going to work on that right side first. We'll put right foot back, left foot forward, and then from this position, we'll push from the inside part of the left foot over towards the outside part of the right foot. But while you're doing this, make sure that you don't lose the inside edge of your right foot. As you do this, your pelvis is going to turn towards that side in this rotational or transverse plane. That's going to begin to open up the glutes and create more space between the sacrum and the leg. Then you're going to work on coming back to the start and getting into and out of that position, feeling the push from left back on a diagonal towards the right. Now, as you're doing this and you're moving to the right, make sure that the rib cage and head are going over that side just as much, if not even a little bit more, than the pelvis. The pelvis coming back on the angle should create the internal rotation, but make sure you're not over shifting on that side or you're going to recreate that hike. We'll do a couple of reps here, making sure we get good opening and transverse plane movement on that right side, as well as a good shift in the rib cage and the head. Once we can do this, then we're ready to address the left side with the next exercise. All right, in this last exercise, we're going to take the same position we created in the previous one, but look at it from the perspective of the left hip. I think of this as 6 of one, half dozen of the other. So in the last exercise, we turned towards the right and we opened up the back of the pelvis. Okay? At the same time, we allowed that pelvis to drop. On the left, we're going to do just the opposite. So we're going to open that hip and allow it to hike. This is actually compressing that same area on the left that is usually compressed on the right. This is actually going to help us get changes that stick when it comes to opening up the back of this right side. Now to do this, we're going to do a pronation drill that's inspired from Gary Ward with the left foot forward and the right foot back. As we're moving forward over this left side, we're going to have the knee in line with the first and second toe. As this happens, we're going to open at the hip and hike up on that side at the same time. Now, if we really want to counteract that right global compression pattern fully, we can actually at the same time allow the left shoulder to drop just a little bit. This isn't the most important detail, and I don't want you to get too obsessed about always shifting the rib cage into the opposite position of the pattern, but I'm going to leave it up to you. Whatever feels best is what you can do. Now, once you have the feel of this, you're going to progress that knee forward over the first and second toe while opening the hip and allowing the hike. Then you'll actually reverse that as you go back, allowing that left hip to drop and turn towards that same side. Again, not obsessing too much about trying to always be in the opposite position, but instead making sure you have the dynamic ability to move into and out of both hip positions on both sides. We can do 8 to 10 reps rest completely, and then do 1 to 2 additional sets. Now, with all this said, there's a big concept here that I just kind of alluded to, and that is really being able to move dynamically into and out of all positions. When we see an asymmetry that's very obvious and it feels like you're stuck in a pattern, it's just because your body has eliminated some of those options. And oftentimes there is a deeper cause as to why your body has done that. If it's just the positions alone, then simply reacquiring access to them should be plenty to be able to make those changes stick. But in many cases, an underlying weakness issue or capacity issue is actually causing that position to happen. And until you figure out where that's coming from, what the source is, it's very hard to get changes that stick. So I've got a couple of ways that you can work on improving this, either on your own or with some help. So if you want to do this on your own, you can go and get my Movement Foundations programs, where I teach you the key foundational movement skills. These are going to integrate and isolate all the key movements through the body, and in doing that program, you'll get real insight into where you might be limited and or weak. Now, if you want a slightly more tailored, fast-track approach, then go ahead and schedule that assessment at the link in the description. Me or one of my other world-class coaches will assess you and help you understand what the true causes of your movement limitations really are. All right, so that does it for this video. As always, make sure to like this video, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Leave me a comment down below and let me know, are you in the right compression pattern, the left AIC pattern, or something else? Until next time, thanks again for watching. Peace.